Alex's backyard was his sanctuary. Nestled in the quiet suburbs, it was a modest space with a neatly trimmed lawn, a few flowering bushes, and his pride and joy, a gleaming stainless steel grill stationed at the center of a spacious patio. Over the years, the grill had become more than just a cooking appliance. It was a symbol of friendship and community. Every weekend, the smell of smoky ribs, juicy burgers, and marinated chicken wafted through the neighborhood, drawing smiles and hunger from anyone within range. It wasn't unusual for Alex to have half the street over for a barbecue, their laughter and chatter blending with the crackle of the grill and the sizzle of meat. This particular Saturday started like any other. The weather was perfect, a clear blue sky, a gentle breeze, and the sun casting golden rays over the patio. Alex, wearing his signature King of the Grill apron, was preparing for his weekend ritual. He carefully arranged briquettes in the grill, ensuring they were perfectly spaced for even heating, and lit them with the expertise of a seasoned pitmaster. As the coals caught fire, a plume of aromatic smoke began to rise, signaling to the neighborhood that the weekend feast was about to begin. Alex's next-door neighbors, an elderly couple named the Allens, waved enthusiastically from their porch. They had lived in the neighborhood for decades and adored Alex's barbecues, often stopping by for a plate of brisket or a few ears of char-grilled corn. Across the street, the Johnson kids, no older than 10, raced to their bikes, hoping to catch the first whiff of grilled hot dogs. The atmosphere was vibrant, a perfect picture of suburban harmony. Digested through hurricane, but then something changed. From the house to Alex's left, the tall wooden gate creaked open and a figure stepped into view. Vanessa. She was new to the neighborhood, having moved in just 2 weeks prior, and had already developed a reputation for being intense. A thin, wiry woman in her late 30s, Vanessa had a perpetually sour expression and a habit of glaring at anyone who dared to approach her property. Her short-cropped hair was dyed an unnatural shade of green, a stark contrast to the pastel aesthetic of the neighborhood, and she often wore shirts with slogans like "Save the Planet" or "Meat is Murder." "Hey, Alex," she called out, her tone sharper than the breeze. Alex turned, spatula in hand, and offered her his usual friendly grin. "Hi, Vanessa, how's it going?" he replied, genuinely hoping to break the ice with his aloof neighbor. Vanessa didn't return his smile. Instead, she marched up to the edge of her yard, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her sharp eyes darted toward the smoke rising from Alex's grill, and her lips curled into a frown. "Do you realize what you're doing to the environment?" she snapped, her voice loud enough to silence the chatter of the Allens and the Johnson kids across the street. "That smoke is toxic. It's polluting the air we all breathe." Alex blinked, taken aback by her aggressive tone. It's just a barbecue," he said, trying to keep his voice light. "I've been doing this for years. It's kind of a neighborhood tradition." "Well, maybe it's time for that tradition to end," Vanessa shot back, stepping closer. "Do you have any idea how harmful grilling is? The carbon emissions alone are astronomical. And don't even get me started on the smell. It's disgusting." Alex scratched the back of his head, unsure how to respond. "I'm sorry if the smell bothers you," he said finally, "but it's just once a week. And honestly, everyone else seems to enjoy it." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Everyone else doesn't matter when it comes to the health of the planet," she hissed. "I'm not going to stand by and let you poison the air with your primitive habits." At this point, several of Alex's friends had arrived, parking their cars along the curb and gathering near the patio. They exchanged awkward glances, unsure whether to intervene or let the argument play out. Alex, ever the peacemaker, decided to de-escalate. "Look, Vanessa," he said, keeping his tone as calm as possible. "I respect your beliefs, but I'm not breaking any rules here. I'm just grilling some food and having a good time with friends. If there's anything specific that's bothering you, maybe we can talk it out later." Vanessa didn't budge. Her glare hardened and her fists clenched at her sides. "You think this is about my beliefs?" she snapped. "This is about right and wrong. What you're doing is wrong, and I won't allow it to continue." With that, she spun on her heel and stormed back into her house, slamming the door behind her. The group on Alex's patio exchanged bewildered looks. "Who pissed in her granola?" muttered one of Alex's friends, eliciting a ripple of nervous laughter. Alex forced a smile, but his gut told him this wasn't the end of it. For the rest of the afternoon, the barbecue proceeded as planned. The food was delicious, the company was lively, and the sound of laughter drowned out any lingering tension. But every so often, Alex caught glimpses of Vanessa peering through her curtains, her face a mask of disapproval. It was unsettling, like being watched by a hawk. That night, as Alex cleaned up the patio and extinguished the remaining coals, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made an enemy. Vanessa's words echoed in his mind, her anger, her conviction, her threat to end his barbecues. It all seemed so over the top, so unnecessary. But Alex had seen enough petty neighborhood disputes to know that some people thrived on creating drama. Little did he know, Vanessa's disdain for his grill was just the spark. The firestorm she was about to unleash would turn his peaceful suburban life into a battleground. The next morning, Alex awoke to the usual sounds of the neighborhood: birds chirping, the hum of distant lawn mowers, and the occasional bark from the Johnson's dog. It was peaceful, almost enough for him to forget the tense confrontation with Vanessa the day before. He made his way to the kitchen, brewed a pot of coffee, and opened the back door to enjoy the crisp morning air on his patio. The grill, which had been the centerpiece of so many joyful gatherings, sat silently under its cover, innocent yet foreboding. Alex shook off the unease and sipped his coffee, convincing himself that Vanessa's outburst had been a one-time incident. People get passionate about their beliefs, he thought. She'd probably let it go. But as he stepped onto his front porch to grab the newspaper, Alex noticed something unusual. Wedged between the pages was an envelope with no return address. His name and address were typed neatly on the front, but the absence of a stamp made it clear that this hadn't come through the mail. Frowning, Alex opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The letterhead featured the bold insignia of the Neighborhood Homeowners Association, but the tone of the message was anything but official. The letter read, "Dear Mr. Alex Porter, it has come to our attention that your recent outdoor activities violate the Homeowner Association's environmental and air quality regulations. Effective immediately, barbecuing on your property is prohibited due to its contribution to air pollution and disruption to community harmony. Failure to comply will result in fines and potential legal action. Sincerely, Homeowner Association Environmental Standards Committee." Alex's eyes scanned the letter again, his confusion giving way to irritation. He'd lived in this neighborhood for years, attended every homeowner association meeting and read every newsletter. Never once had he seen any mention of air quality regulations. This letter was a fabrication, or worse, an abuse of power. He flipped the paper over, searching for contact details or a signature, but found none. The vagueness of the Environmental Standards Committee made it clear that this wasn't an official homeowner association policy. The realization hit him like a bucket of cold water. This had Vanessa written all over it. Clutching the letter, Alex marched back inside and grabbed his phone. He quickly dialed Jerry Thompson, the homeowner association president, a friendly retiree who had always been reasonable and approachable. After a few rings, Jerry picked up, his voice cheerful as always. "Morning, Alex. What can I do for you?" Jerry asked. "Morning, Jerry. I need to ask you about something strange I received. Apparently there's a new rule about barbecues and air quality. I got a letter claiming I'm violating homeowner association regulations," Alex explained, trying to keep his tone calm but firm. There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by a chuckle. "Barbecue regulations? That's news to me. We've never had anything like that on the books," Jerry said. "Can you send me a copy of the letter?" "Of course," Alex replied. "I'll email it to you right away." After hanging up, Alex scanned the letter and emailed it to Jerry. Within minutes, the phone rang again. "Well, Alex," Jerry began, his tone more serious now, "I can confirm that this letter didn't come from the Homeowner Association. We don't have any Environmental Standards Committee, and we've certainly never banned barbecues. Looks like someone's trying to scare you." Alex sighed, frustration bubbling up. "I have a pretty good idea who it might be." "Let me guess," Jerry said knowingly. "Vanessa?" "Bingo." Jerry let out a long sigh. "I've already had a few complaints about her trying to enforce her own rules. She's new to the neighborhood, but she's already made waves. I'll talk to her and make it clear that she can't go around impersonating the homeowner association." "Thanks, Jerry," Alex said. "I appreciate it." After the call ended, Alex felt a mix of relief and anger. Vanessa's stunt was petty and underhanded, but at least he had confirmation that she wasn't backed by any official authority. Still, the thought of her going to such lengths to disrupt his life left a sour taste in his mouth. He resolved to confront her directly, not to escalate the situation, but to make it clear that her behavior was unacceptable. That afternoon, Alex knocked on Vanessa's door. He waited, listening to the muffled sound of footsteps approaching from inside. When the door opened, Vanessa stood there, her arms crossed and her expression guarded. "Hello, Alex," she said, her voice as icy as her demeanor. "What brings you here?" "I think you know," Alex replied, holding up the letter. "Care to explain this?" Vanessa's eyes flicked to the paper, but she didn't flinch. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said flatly. "If you have an issue with the homeowner association, take it up with them." "Cut the act, Vanessa," Alex said, his patience wearing thin. "I spoke to Jerry. He confirmed that this letter didn't come from the homeowner association. It's fake, and we both know you're the one behind it." Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. Her silence was all the confirmation Alex needed. "Look," he continued, trying to keep his tone measured, "I get that you're passionate about your beliefs, but this isn't the way to go about it. You don't get to make up rules and harass your neighbors just because you don't like what they're doing." Vanessa finally spoke, her voice low and venomous. "What you're doing is harmful to the environment, to this community, and to me. If you won't listen to reason, I'll do whatever it takes to stop you." Alex shook his head in disbelief. "Is this really the hill you want to die on? Over a barbecue?" Vanessa's glare hardened. "It's not just a barbecue. It's a symbol of everything that's wrong with people like you, selfish, ignorant, and destructive." Alex opened his mouth to respond, but Vanessa slammed the door in his face before he could get a word out. For a moment he stood there, stunned by the intensity of her hostility. Finally, he turned and walked away, resolving to let the homeowner association handle the situation. But as the days passed, Alex realized that Vanessa wasn't done. The letter was just the beginning of her campaign against his barbecues. Little did he know, her next move would escalate the conflict in ways he couldn't have imagined. The following weekend arrived with the same sense of anticipation that had always marked Alex's barbecues. By now, his friends and neighbors knew the drill. Come hungry, bring a side dish if you could, and be prepared for great food and even better company. Despite the tension from the previous week, Alex was determined not to let Vanessa ruin his tradition. His grill was prepped, his ribs marinated overnight in his signature blend of spices, and his cooler stocked with cold drinks. Yet, beneath the surface of his cheerful preparations, there lingered a gnawing unease. He couldn't shake the feeling that Vanessa wasn't done. That morning, Alex decided to be proactive. He walked to the Allens' house, his closest neighbors, to let them know about the drama with Vanessa. As always, the elderly couple greeted him warmly, their golden retriever wagging its tail at the sight of him. "Alex, good to see you," Mr. Allen said, ushering him inside. "What brings you over so early?" Alex explained the situation, the fake homeowner association letter, Vanessa's confrontation, and her clear disdain for his barbecues. Mr. Allen frowned, shaking his head in disbelief. "I can't imagine why she'd have a problem with you," he said. "Your barbecues bring the whole neighborhood together. If anything, she's the one being disruptive." "She's always glaring out her window," Miss Allen added. "I've tried saying hello a few times, but she just ignores me. Very odd woman." Encouraged by their support, Alex returned home to continue his preparations. As the hours passed, the familiar sound of car doors slamming and laughter filling the air signaled the arrival of his guests. The Johnson kids dashed across the street with plates of cookies, and the Allens arrived with a tray of deviled eggs. Soon the patio was alive with conversation and the tantalizing aroma of food cooking on the grill. But Alex's sense of foreboding wasn't misplaced. Halfway through the barbecue, as Alex was flipping burgers and laughing at a story one of his friends was telling, Vanessa made her move. The gate to her backyard swung open and she stormed into Alex's yard with the fury of a storm cloud. In one hand she held a garden hose, in the other a clipboard. Her face was twisted into a scowl, and her eyes darted around the group as though she were inspecting a crime scene. "Excuse me," she barked, her voice cutting through the laughter. Conversation stopped mid-sentence as everyone turned to face her. "Vanessa," Alex said, trying to remain calm, "what are you doing here?" "I'm here to put an end to this nonsense," she snapped. "Your barbecues are a public nuisance, and I won't tolerate it any longer." The guests exchanged bewildered glances. One of Alex's friends muttered, "She's serious?" Vanessa marched straight to the grill, her clipboard raised like a shield. "You're violating multiple environmental codes," she declared, pointing to the smoky air rising from the grill. "Not to mention the noise. I've had enough of this." "Vanessa, we've been through this," Alex said, stepping between her and the grill. "You don't have the authority to shut down my barbecue. You're not the homeowner association, and you don't make the rules." "Maybe I don't," Vanessa sneered, turning to the group. "But I can call the police, and I will." The tension was palpable. The once lively patio was now silent, the guests frozen in awkward disbelief. Alex sighed, his patience wearing thin. "Go ahead and call them, Vanessa," he said. "But you're not going to intimidate me or ruin this for everyone." Vanessa's lips curled into a malicious grin. "Fine," she said, stepping back. "Have it your way." Before anyone could react, she turned on the hose and sprayed a jet of water directly at the grill. The sizzling meat hissed as the flames were extinguished and smoke billowed into the air. Guests gasped, and Alex stood in stunned silence as Vanessa continued to douse the grill, soaking the patio and everyone nearby. "Vanessa, stop!" Alex shouted, grabbing the hose and yanking it away from her. Water sprayed wildly for a moment before he managed to shut it off. "You're insane!" one of his friends exclaimed, stepping forward to shield the food from further damage. Vanessa's smug expression didn't waver. "Consider this your warning," she said, turning on her heel and marching back to her yard. As the gate slammed shut behind her, the group erupted into a mix of disbelief and anger. "What the hell was that?" one guest said. "Is she serious?" Alex ran a hand through his hair, his frustration boiling over. "I'm sorry, everyone," he said, his voice tight. "I didn't think she'd actually do something like this." "Don't apologize, Alex," Miss Allen said firmly. "She's the one who should be apologizing." "I'll call the police," another guest suggested. "No," Alex said after a moment. "She wants a reaction. Let's just clean up and try to salvage what we can." The group rallied, salvaging what food remained untouched and drying off the patio as best they could. Despite their best efforts, the mood was dampened, and guests began to leave earlier than usual. By the time the sun set, Alex was left alone on his patio, staring at the now-cold grill. As he cleaned up the mess Vanessa had left behind, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. She'd made it clear that she wouldn't stop until she got her way, no matter how far she had to go. That night, as Alex lay in bed, he replayed the day's events in his mind. He couldn't believe how quickly things had escalated. Vanessa's behavior had gone from annoying to outright dangerous, and he knew he had to take action before things got worse. But what would she do next? As he drifted off to sleep, he couldn't shake the feeling that Vanessa was plotting her next move, and that it would be even more unhinged than anything she'd done so far. The week after the barbecue disaster felt like a quiet before a storm. Alex went about his usual routine, but there was an underlying tension in everything he did. He caught glimpses of Vanessa from time to time, peeking through her curtains, tending to her garden, or walking briskly to her car. But she didn't approach him again. It was almost as if she was lying in wait, biding her time. The silence was unnerving. Alex kept replaying the incident in his mind, trying to predict her next move. After her stunt with the hose, it was clear she wasn't above direct action. He'd thought about filing a report with the police, but what would he even say? She hadn't technically broken any laws, just caused a scene. He decided to let it go. For now. The following Saturday, Alex decided to fire up his grill again. This time, he kept it low-key. No big gathering, no invitations to the neighborhood. It was just him, his sister Caroline, and her young daughter Mia, who had come to visit for the weekend. He figured a small family barbecue would keep things under Vanessa's radar. The day was peaceful at first. Caroline helped prepare a salad in the kitchen while Mia played in the backyard. Alex set up the grill, keeping an eye on the sky as gray clouds began to gather. He hoped the rain would hold off long enough to cook a few steaks. As he lit the grill, he couldn't help but glance over at Vanessa's house. Her blinds were shut and her driveway was empty. Maybe she wasn't even home. Alex allowed himself a moment of relief. But the peace didn't last long. Mia ran over, clutching a flower she had picked from the garden. "Uncle Alex, look!" she said excitedly. Alex crouched down to admire the flower, smiling at her enthusiasm. "That's beautiful, Mia. Why don't you go show your mom?" As Mia skipped off toward the house, Alex caught a whiff of something unusual. It wasn't the usual smell of charcoal or lighter fluid. It was sharper, more chemical. He frowned and turned back to the grill, where a thin trail of smoke was rising. At first he thought it was just the coals catching fire, but the smoke grew thicker, blacker, and the smell more acrid. Panic set in as he realized something was wrong. He stepped closer, and that's when he saw it. A strange, oily residue coating the edges of the grill. "Caroline," he called out, his voice tight with alarm. "Take Mia inside, now." Caroline appeared at the door, her face etched with concern. "What's going on?" "Just do it," Alex shouted, grabbing the lid of the grill. He lifted it cautiously, and the sight that greeted him made his blood run cold. Inside the grill, nestled among the coals, was a small, crudely made device. Wires and a metal canister were visible through the smoke. Alex didn't need to be an expert to realize what it was. A homemade explosive. His first instinct was to get as far away as possible. He backed away slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. "Caroline, call 911, he yelled over his shoulder. Caroline grabbed her phone and dialed, her hands shaking. Meanwhile, Alex kept his eyes fixed on the grill, praying the device wouldn't detonate. The smoke was growing thicker, and the acrid smell was almost unbearable. Minutes felt like hours as they waited for the police and fire department to arrive. Caroline kept Mia inside, distracting her with cartoons, while Alex stayed outside, his eyes never leaving the grill. When the authorities finally arrived, they wasted no time securing the area. A bomb squad officer approached Alex, who quickly explained the situation. The officer nodded grimly and ordered everyone to stay back as they inspected the device. After what felt like an eternity, the bomb squad managed to disarm the explosive. The officer in charge approached Alex, his expression grave. "You're lucky," he said. "This thing was unstable. If you'd lit the grill a little sooner, it could have gone off." Alex's stomach churned at the thought. Who would do something like this? He asked, though he already knew the answer. The officer hesitated. "It's hard to say for sure, but based on what you've told us about your neighbor, well, it's a lead we'll be following up on." The police took Alex's statement and assured him they would investigate. As they packed up and left, Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. Vanessa had escalated her campaign against him to a dangerous level, and he had no idea how far she was willing to go. That night, Alex couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind set his nerves on edge. He kept replaying the day's events in his mind, trying to make sense of it all. How had it come to this? The next morning, Alex woke to the sound of knocking at his door. He opened it to find Jerry, the homeowner association president, standing on his porch. "Alex, I heard what happened," Jerry said, his voice filled with concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Alex replied, though he didn't feel it. Jerry shook his head. "This is getting out of hand. We need to address this as a community." They spent the next hour discussing the situation. Jerry promised to call an emergency homeowner association meeting to discuss Vanessa's behavior and what could be done to prevent further incidents. As Jerry left, Alex felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, with the community's support, he could put an end to Vanessa's reign of terror. But deep down, he knew it wasn't over. Vanessa had already proven she was willing to cross any line, and as he looked out at his once peaceful backyard, Alex couldn't help but wonder what she would do next. The day of the emergency homeowner association meeting arrived with an air of tension hanging over the neighborhood. Alex had spent the morning preparing for the meeting, gathering evidence of Vanessa's escalating behavior. He printed copies of the fake homeowner association letter, screenshots of text exchanges with neighbors who had witnessed her antics, and even included a detailed account of the explosive device found in his grill. The police report, though still under investigation, added weight to his claims. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a small but functional space that usually hosted cheerful gatherings like birthday parties and bake sales. Today, it was filled with a mix of concerned neighbors and homeowner association members, all murmuring about the recent events. Word had spread quickly, and almost everyone in the community had an opinion. Jerry, the homeowner association president, stood at the front of the room, his usual calm demeanor replaced with a sense of urgency. As the clock struck 7 p.m., he called the meeting to order. "Thank you all for coming," Jerry began. "As many of you know, we've had some serious issues arise over the past few weeks, culminating in a dangerous incident involving one of our residents, Alex Porter. This meeting is to address these concerns and determine how we, as a community, should move forward." Alex was the first to speak. He stood at the front of the room, holding the stack of documents he'd prepared. His voice was steady but firm as he recounted everything that had happened, from the fake letter to the garden hose incident and finally the explosive device. "I've always loved this neighborhood," Alex said, looking around the room. "It's been a place of friendship and community. But lately, that's changed. What Vanessa has done isn't just harassment, it's dangerous. I'm here to ask for your support in taking action to ensure this never happens again." The room was silent for a moment before a murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Several neighbors raised their hands to speak, each sharing their own experiences with Vanessa. Miss Allen was the first. "She's been hostile to everyone since she moved in," she said. "I've tried to be friendly, but she acts like we're the enemy. And what she did to Alex? That's not just a disagreement, it's a threat." Another neighbor chimed in. "She's tried to enforce her own rules on me too. Last month she left a note on my car saying it was an eyesore and threatened to report me to the homeowner association. I don't even know what she's talking about. It's a perfectly fine car." As more neighbors spoke, it became clear that Vanessa's behavior wasn't an isolated incident. She had been targeting multiple residents, using intimidation and fake authority to push her agenda. Finally, Vanessa was given a chance to defend herself. She stood, her posture rigid and her face defiant. "This is a witch hunt," she declared, her voice rising above the murmurs. "All I've ever wanted is to make this community better. But instead of appreciating my efforts, you're all ganging up on me." "Better for who?" Alex interjected, unable to hold back. "Everything you've done has been about control, not community." Vanessa glared at him, but said nothing. Jerry raised a hand to restore order. "Vanessa, the evidence against you is substantial. We've received multiple complaints, and your actions have put this community at risk. Do you have anything to say about the explosive device found on Alex's property?" Vanessa's eyes flickered, and for a moment her defiance faltered. "I had nothing to do with that," she said quickly. "This is all being blown out of proportion." Jerry nodded solemnly. "The police investigation will determine the truth, but for now, we must address your behavior as a member of this community." After hours of discussion, the homeowner association voted unanimously to take action. Vanessa was fined for violating community rules, her voting rights within the homeowner association were revoked, and she was placed on probation. If her behavior continued, the homeowner association would pursue legal action to have her removed from the neighborhood. Vanessa stormed out of the meeting, slamming the door behind her. For the first time in weeks, Alex felt a sense of relief. The community had stood by him, and steps were being taken to hold Vanessa accountable. In the days that followed, the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. Alex resumed his barbecues, though he kept them small and private for a while. The Allens, the Johnsons, and a few other close friends joined him. Their laughter and camaraderie a comforting reminder of what made the neighborhood special. But the peace wasn't entirely restored. Vanessa remained in her house, her blinds perpetually drawn. She no longer harassed Alex directly, but her presence lingered like a shadow over the street. A few weeks later, Alex received a call from the police. They had completed their investigation into the explosive device and found fingerprints linking it to Vanessa. She was arrested and charged with multiple offenses, including reckless endangerment and possession of an explosive device. The news spread quickly, and the neighborhood was abuzz with relief and disbelief. Vanessa's house was soon put up for sale, and within a month, she was gone. The new owners, a cheerful young couple with a baby on the way, brought a fresh sense of hope to the block. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, Alex hosted his first full-scale barbecue since the ordeal. The smell of grilled ribs and burgers filled the air, and the sound of laughter echoed through the neighborhood. The Allens brought their famous deviled eggs, the Johnson kids played tag in the yard, and even Jerry stopped by for a plate of brisket. As Alex flipped burgers on the grill, Caroline leaned over and whispered, "Looks like things are finally back to normal." Alex smiled, glancing around at his friends and neighbors. "Yeah," he said, "I think they are."